Welcome to the Soapboxx Podcast. I'm your host, TJ Legacy, and I'm here joined with our lovely co-host. We have all the way from Tallahassee, Florida. I was like, wait, I don't know where Javonni is today. Yeah, all the way from Tallahassee, Florida, we have Javonni Hampton. What's going on, Javonni?
Hey, what's up? Happy to be here.
What's good? And all the way from Duval County, we have our girl Ish. What's going on, Ish?
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. And today is a very special episode because we have a special guest calling in. As you can see her name, we have attorney. Oh, well, actually, not just an attorney. We have the former counsel to the Trayvon Martin family. We have attorney Natalie Jackson. Attorney Natalie Jackson, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm sorry your audience can't see me, but I'm here.
No. See, that's the thing is Natalie is a phantom, a social justice warrior. She's everywhere, so we got to make sure that she's good. You're quarantining, so we're good. We're honored to have you on the show. I wanted to start off by telling our audience that the reason that over the next month, the month of May, I really wanted to, and we decided as a group that we are going to have the month of May be about the movement, the modern day civil rights movement, then, now, and forever. Because really we're in these times right now, everybody talks about the civil rights movement of the past, but we got a lot of issues pertaining to social justice that we're actually facing today. And if we don't take care of these things today, we're going to be in, our kids are going to be in some trouble in the future. So I wanted to take this month out to make sure that we really focus on solution-based conversation about social justice and see what we can talk about and figure out, and hopefully we can come up with some solutions. And having Natalie here to give us some insight would be is extremely beneficial. So that's what we'll be doing. So for those who rock with us on the Soapboxx Podcast, thank you so much for rocking with us this week, every other week in the past. We definitely appreciate it. Follow us at Soapboxx Podcast with 2X on Instagram, and follow us and like our Facebook page. So Natalie, a lot's been going on in the news this week. Are you familiar with the story with the young with not want to say young man, with the guy in San Diego with the KKK mask going to the grocery store?
Yes, I'm familiar with that fool.
Yeah, see? Okay, so this show, I want to start my segment we have here on the Soapbox, our unpopular opinions, right? And so my unpopular opinion when it comes to seeing a grown man, not a suspected white supremacist, a full-blown white supremacist in a grocery store with women, children during these quarantine times, it's the audacity, the boldness of it, because everybody should know, and they know, white supremacists know what that hood represents, and they're not trying to be funny. I think that if someone wears a hood, I automatically classify them as a domestic terrorist. You're automatically, to me, a threat, and you should have that hood pulled off your head, and you should be physically confronted because you are a threat to my safety and the safety of everybody around. I don't know if you're going to rob. I don't know if you have a bomb. I don't know. So I would be completely triggered by seeing someone with a hood in that boldness. So I would confront them to the point where it would possibly get physical for me to defend myself in public. What do you think about that stance, Natalie? Would you confront somebody with a hood?
I think you're absolutely right. No, I wouldn't confront that fool. I would make the store owners confront him. We have proof of the white supremacists and the terrorists just recently with Dylan Roof shooting up the church. So you're absolutely right, TJ. The Black people, when we see something like that, that is an overt threat to Black people. So that is one situation where all of us are walking around with masks on and all of that. So to add even more, a more overt threatening act to it by using a KKK hoodie. Yeah, I think that the grocery store owners had an obligation to throw him out.
Yeah, I believe so too. And I wanted to ask.
But no, I don't
Javon,
want you to confront him because you don't know what he got under that hood. No.
and you know what? A lot of people say that. You know, me being and I've said this on the show, me being a licensed security guard, I'm actually trained. So I already know like how to de-escalate a situation, or if someone is a threat, how to confront that type of a threat, if need be. I know. I think I had a conversation with my mother, and I told her, we talked about this story, and she's like, well, she kind of had those same sentiments with you. Like, why would you confront this guy? But don't you think? And I want to ask. I'm gonna turn it to Ishna. Do you feel like if we don't confront these type of threats or make a statement, what does that say about us as a society? Or you don't feel that way? As a Black society?
As a Black society, I think it differs based on the Black person. For example, it's so ridiculous. It's such a ridiculous action that my responsibility to go up to him. My immediate response would be, you're a fool and you're just ridiculous for even my attention or time. Like, I wouldn't even take him serious enough to use my energy to go up to him and say something, because it's so ridiculous out in your face that you can get his attention, and he's trying. And so you would have to behave a certain type of way where you're trying to do. Natalie is correct in saying that the store owners had an obligation to put him out, because that is a disturbance, and that is a direct, threat and rudeness towards people of color understanding our history. So yes, something should be done, but I do think the proper people should handle it, and it should be handled mindfully, using steps for everyone who is in that store.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I feel like your issue may be going through a little technical difficulty. Natalie, are you still with us?
I am still with you.
Okay. So for those who are looking at the live, you may not be able to see Natalie's, it has a box with Natalie's name on it. You may not be able to see that during the actual live feed, but Natalie is with us having this conversation. I'm
gonna be here to the end, TJ.
Yeah, yes, having this conversation. No, but I agree. That these people are trying to get a reaction, but I honestly think the antidote to some of this overt racism, and let's be honest, when we have this conversation about overt racism, I prefer overt racism to covert racism. Right? Like, am I wrong, Natalie? I think
we all do, but yeah. This is a different situation, because this is someone hiding behind a mask, and you don't know what is under his mask, what's under that cape. So this is a whole different situation than knowing the races. This person could have had anything under their bombs, like you said, anything. So this person was a danger to everyone, not just Black people, to everyone in that store.
Yes, I agree. I absolutely agree. And so this week is a special week, because this week is Mother's Day. This Sunday is Mother's Day. And before I get started, happy Mother's Day to Natalie and Ishna and Javonni. But I think you're welcome. This intrinsic fear, I believe, is with mothers every day. It's particularly Black mothers with their children and going out into the world and having to deal and confront racism. I really wanted to talk with you all about that and start with Javonni. Javonni, do you have a young son, King Noble. Do you, as he's young, but do you have these concerns and these fears as a young Black mother that, hey, when he's growing up, what type of world that he's going to be inheriting?
Oh yeah, of course. And in fact, I had a conversation like that today with his dad, just about, like at what age or what is the protocol for young Black men? Is it, if anyone, regardless if they are law enforcement, anybody who threatens you who is white or, pretty much, yeah, white, do you automatically surrender as a Black man because you don't know the consequences? If you are in a situation where you do not have any help, it's almost like we have to automatically surrender. And if not, we will be killed, So it's not only are we teaching our kids to put their hands on the wheel if they get pulled over. It's also almost seems like if a white man shouts your name in the middle of the street, you got to stop. Because if you don't, what's going to happen, you know? So it's something that you have to talk about. You know, you want to teach your kids to be strong and don't let anyone talk to you any kind of way. But I think the reality is we don't necessarily have the rights that we want to have right now.
Yeah, Natalie, you have children. Well, your children are grown men. At least one of them, right? How many kids?
Yeah, I have one son, and he's grown.
Yes. So, what was it like for you as a young mother? How did you, like Javonni said, how did you have those conversations when it came to race and going out into the world and dealing with and combating racism?
Well, my situation is a little different because I am a lawyer. I just took my son to court. He saw it. So I was never a parent that said this is officer friendly. I have told my son throughout his lifetime to avoid police officers. Do not, I've never encouraged him to go and shake their hands or to do any of that because it is dangerous. And it's not because of a specific police officer, because I'm sure there are specific police officers who are very nice, but on the whole, they are a danger to my Black child. And so I don't encourage him to interact with them at all.
So when you see, you know, in neighborhoods, you know, we talk a lot about community police relations, and you see, you know, the cops at fish fries, or you see, you know, something that I hate. You see a lot of law enforcement using kids as political props, taking pictures with them. Like, what do you say to those parents who are just thinking like, well, I don't want that don't want their kids to be afraid of cops. They want them to be respectful, but, you know, they don't necessarily understand the, you know, how they're being used in a political propaganda.
Right. I think it just depends on the specific cop in that instance. As far as political propagandas, yes, we all know that, you know, they do have barbecues and stuff in Black neighborhoods for those reasons. I know some community police officers who really do care about the community. So I do think it really depends on the specific police officer, but overall, like I know specific police officers who I do talk to, and who my son does talk to, and I would let him. But then on the whole, I'm talking about police officers you don't know, and the ones that, you know, that are just there, because what can happen many times is that with them coming into these communities, the kids become familiar with them. It's just the same way of them being in the schools. So let's just put them in the schools with resource officers. Okay.
Correct.
So school resource officers. What many parents don't know is that school resource officer is there to arrest your child. So when children used to get in fights, they get sent to the principal's office and it was done. Now the school resource officer is there to arrest your child. So no, I don't think that those people should be in school systems. I don't think that they should be anywhere where we're encouraging people to grow, to socialize, to learn. They should be where crimes are. And until they can figure out how to de-escalate situations, how to do racial bias training, how to hire people who are correct, then they should not be in those situations. They should just do their job and not try to say we're such good guys, because you're not. You're agents of the state who can take away someone's life and liberty. And many times your brothers in blue, some of them, they go way overboard and with no repercussions from anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of no repercussions, we all, this week, I think everybody was in, I don't know if they were in shock. I don't know if everybody was in disbelief, but, you know, what happened in Georgia with the murder of, I want to say, hopefully I'm pronouncing this brother's name right, is Ahmaud Arbery. He was a black man, unarmed black man, who was just jogging. Seemingly, he apparently seemed to be hunted down by 3 white supremacists. And they're claiming that it was some sort of a citizen's arrest in Georgia because of some break-ins or whatever, or some robbery. So they claim that this black man, Ahmaud, fit the description to whatever robberies or whatever, and they decided to racially target this man, and he had to fight for his life, and he was ultimately shot, and it was caught on camera. Now, this happened a few months ago, but the actual footage, the video, was released, and Twitter was in a firestorm about why these men are still walking the streets and arrested. And so before we go into the actual specifics of it, Natalie, I wanted to ask you, you're the former counsel of Trayvon Martin, from Trayvon Martin's family. What is it like for you as an attorney when you get those type of phone calls?
They are very traumatizing. And when you get a phone call of a shooting, it really does, it brings you to this feeling of powerlessness that I think Javonni talked about. You know, what should Black men be able to do? What can they do? When Javonni talked about that, there's a sense of powerlessness, because you know you're going against the system. You know it's always going to be the same thing. They're going to demonize the person. You know that they're going to look into his background. They're going to do a drug toxicology to see if he got any weed in his system. They're going to put all these statements out about him in a police shooting case to try to prejudice the people. You know that they're not going to arrest. You know they're going to have a grand jury, which they're going to have in this case. You know the grand jury is probably going to come back with a non-indict. When any other time, any other shooting, even if it is a manslaughter, there's an arrest. These prosecutors do not arrest. And when it's a Black man shot by a police officer, and it doesn't have to be a white police officer, a police officer. So they do not arrest. And if they feel immunity, this is what happens. You've got the person who was in this truck, he was a former police officer. So, and it was his son, a former police officer and his son. And I don't know if you guys just heard, but there was breaking news today that there was a third person, the person who took the video in the car. Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, yeah, it's really, these type of cases make you feel like, what the heck am I doing? Because nothing's changing.
Yeah, because we have, and I saw that report from, I believe Sean King was the first social media platform. I'm not sure if he actually broke. Okay. So he actually did break the story. Before we get into the grand jury, because I know we want to get your expertise on that, I wanted to get Ishna's reaction. Ishna, did you happen to see the video? What was your initial reaction when you heard about the story?
I did see the video, and just him when the young Black, well, he's 25, when Ahmaud fell to the ground, like the hit kind of was like in correlation to it hitting my heart. Like it was one of the saddest things I've ever seen. Like his body, that he tried to fight. The thing that ran through my mind is he knew he was gonna die. As he staggered and fell down, like that's one of the most terrifying feelings for him to know in that moment was the end of his life. Even when he fell down, I could see like one of the guys, the father Gregory McMichael and Travis McMichael were two of the white men who were on the video that I saw. And they kind of like moved out the way as he fell down, like your body is not going to touch mine. Like there was no remorse, there was no sympathy in any type of way. You could tell it had been intentional, and that's exactly, shooting them is exactly what they wanted to do. And for me, I just was like, it's pitiful, it's sad. There were several emotions, but I really did imagine knowing like you fought for your life and someone shot you. And in those moments, your body is shut down or about to die. Like what runs through you as a person who's experiencing that? And I just felt for him. And just to see how they responded to him as his body fell to the ground, it's disheartening and it's sad. And we do ask what we have to have changed. The behavior of how we're treated by officers, whoever, it has to change. Because people are saying enough is enough. And for the greater good of humanity, there has to be change in the behavior of how Black men and Black people and people in general are treated by others, who have these positions of power and they won't let. And I will say real quick, I said I wasn't talk about this on the show. I won't get into details and incriminate myself in any type of way, but just 2 nights ago, I was actually in an altercation with an officer, and he degraded me. He told me how bad of a human being I was. Now, mind you, I've never been arrested, you know, I've been awarded for giving back to the society. I've literally been given awards for being a leader, different things like that, have gone through college, a great mom, very responsible citizen in society and helpful and contributing, doing my part. And this one incident with this officer, a white male, he literally degraded me. He was saying all types of things about me. And then he had the nerve to tell me that I wasn't showing any remorse. You know, and I'm like, how could I? You're literally sitting here dictating you're destroying my character of one incident with me. I don't even know you're doing it. So no, I'm not in a position to show any remorse because I'm confused about me. I'm a terrible human being, and you've met me one time in your entire life, and you actually are wrong. You know what I'm saying? And so at that point, with this officer, I did realize if I continue talking to this man, he's going to show me that he has power over me. To Natalie's point, to use that to take away my liberties and my rights. As a mother, I don't have time to allow it to go in that direction. And I also realized that no matter what I said to him, it didn't matter. He'd already made his judgment off that one time with me, and it was terrible. He was me, and just I wasn't shit, basically. You know, I don't know anything about me that's contrary to the entire character. But I stopped talking because I was like, at this point, it's becoming ego. And he is trying to incite me just to see if I'll do something violent or disrespectful so that he can me. So I stopped and I just stood there and looked at him. Yeah. Just was like, well, we're going to see how this plays out. Either you're going to let me go into my home because I was outside my house in my car. And I was like, either you're going to let me go into my home or you're going to handcuff me. So I just literally stopped doing everything so that he wouldn't have additional reason to, you know, to take my life. Or do anything ridiculous, like try to take my child away or something like that. So I literally froze and didn't say anything else because what I said didn't matter. After that, I was very irate. And the question, what can we do when a person, they're incorrect about who you are and what you're doing. And they're going to tell you anyway who you are and what you're doing. And also, even in a matter of, let's say you are committing a crime, but it's not felt as egregious, and they try to ruin your entire life, or in my case, you're not doing anything at all, and they murder you and take it too far. We have to have solutions for what to do in situations. So, like I said earlier, for their behavior to change on how they're treating us, because people aren't going to just sit around. As these generations grow and we mix more with each other, races, and we all, like, more of us become more and more educated, more of us become lawyers, this behavior isn't going to be acceptable. So there has to start being change in their behavior so that we actually spare all of us.
Well, the change has to be that they have to face repercussions, and that's what is not happening. So until we start having people in power positions that can make them face repercussions, then we're not going to have change. And that's one of the reasons it's so important to make sure, while people are all talking about the president and all that stuff, to make sure our court systems, to make sure our state attorneys, to make sure that our police chiefs, to make sure all of those people are progressive people who understand that we're all equal and everyone should be treated equally.
Yeah, but Natalie, I heard, but you know, to give a little pushback, I've heard you say, like, listen, the game is rigged, right? You're like, look, the game is rigged. The fix is in when it comes to Black folks and our experience and us getting justice. We're literally at the casino when it comes to the judicial system.
Well, so, the game is rigged if we play it traditionally. That's why we have to put progressive people in office. When I mean progressive, I'm talking about people who say, listen, this ain't right. I don't care what it says. I have this executive power and I'm making a change. People like our state attorney, Erin Ayala, who said she was not going to go after the death penalty. So that was a lot of people did not like that when she said that, because it was a Black police officer who was shot and she was beloved in the community. But Aramis was absolutely right. She made that executive decision that I'm not going to enforce the death penalty because it is racially biased and it is also a waste of taxpayer money.
Yeah.
And so until we have people in power, and the reason she was able to do that is because she had what is called executive power in her office. She could do unilateral things in the office. A lot of people don't know that, like state attorneys. State attorneys can actually administratively expunge your record. They have the power to do that.
Okay.
Without going through anybody else. They have the power to do that. So this is why it's so important for us to figure out the positions of power and then to leverage that power. Instead of saying, oh, well, nobody's ever done this before, we leverage that power. When I worked for Governor Bush when I was in law school. My job with him, until he found out that I was so liberal.
I was about to say, I was like, you lied on your resume. I'm
former military. I think they took it as I was going to be more like them since I'm former military.
Once they figured out that you was trying to lead that revolution, they was like,
Hello. But I mean, the Republicans have it right. My job for him was to look to see, he had his whole legal office working on finding out what the executive powers that he had, meaning what could he do without asking anybody else for permission. That was our job, to look for that. And those are the kind of things we need to be asking ourselves and making sure our politicians are asking those same questions. What can they do without asking anybody else for permission? And then they need to make changes. And that's how we fix this rigged system.
No, that's definitely insightful, and I'm glad that you kind of elaborated on that. And I wanted to go back to the initial when there's a tragedy, when there's a murder, the initial timeline of, okay, they're gonna go to a grand jury. Can you explain for our listeners and for us, give us insight? What is that decision like? Like, so if you have a family, that wants justice, there's not an arrest, what type of decision making goes into bringing a case to a grand jury rather than just going ahead with an arrest where there's clear evidence? Because I actually read that they're Benjamin Crump, and I know he's your mentor.
Yeah.
He said, what is there to consider?
There is something to consider. But
exactly.
Let me tell your audience what a grand jury is, because many people don't know this. A grand jury is a secret jury. You do not know who's on the jury. You do not know what evidence is being presented to the jury. You do not know the general public, and you can never know. The records are sealed. That is why most police cases go to a grand jury. And that's why most police are never indicted. The indictment of a grand jury is based on the prosecutor. There is no defense attorney in there defending or saying, hey, this is wrong. It's just the prosecutor presenting this evidence to the grand jury. So depending on what the prosecutor presents to them, which you will never know what they presented to them.
Yeah.
That's really, the old saying is that even a ham sandwich can be indicted, because the prosecutor is the only one talking. So if he's being convincing, guess what? They're going to get indicted. So anytime someone is not indicted by a grand jury, it was probably because the prosecutor didn't want them to be indicted.
Yeah. Well, even when they are indicted, they can still the prosecutor could still say they're not going to press charges, correct? Because I know here in Orlando,
but they would probably never do that, because that would be, most prosecutors are elected, and so now you're going against what the jury says. So they could say that.
Remember that happened here in Orlando.
I do remember.
Yeah. So I'm like, wait a minute. So it's like, even when we do have those progressive prosecutors, I'm trying to get into the mind or the psyche as to, a grand jury, you just told us that it's some type of Herculean effort for an indictment to come back. And even when they come back, there's another hurdle with the prosecutor.
Well, no. There is no Herculean effort to get an indictment. Indictments are very easy to get.
Oh, okay.
So when the prosecutor does not get them, That's probably because they did not want to get it. Because in indictment, the only person that's talking is the prosecutor. So that's the only person that the jury hears from. So it all depends on what the prosecutor wants to happen. So that's why indictments are traditionally very easy to get. Now, in a case like this, where it's now a media case, you can kind of understand why after, now you're on your third prosecutor in this case, because the first prosecutor, one of the shooters worked for her.
Oh, okay.
The first prosecutor. So the police officer shooter worked for her. She recused herself. There was a second prosecutor that the family asked to be recused because that second prosecutor worked for the first prosecutor. So the family asked for them to be recused, and that person did recuse himself. So now you're on a third prosecutor. This third prosecutor has now gotten a ball that is like, oh my gosh, this is a landmine. So let me just put it to the grand jury. So that's probably the mindset of this prosecutor is let me just give it to the grand jury and let them decide what to do. I'm not going to be brave enough to make an arrest, which is what we should demand. And what if we had someone who was, because this is a power of that power, right? This third prosecutor has the power to make an arrest and do the right thing. But no, that's not what they do. They're going to do the political thing. And not saying that, he doesn't think these people should be arrested, but politically at this point where you got it divided down the middle, you've got, the pro-gun people and the racist, and then you've got black people upset, they're going to just punt it to a grand jury. Now, the grand jury in this case, I would think would indict them.
You would hope so. We would hope so. You would hope that they would indict, because it's like you said, it's so clear of what actually happened. But even, we know within our society, especially with Eric Gardner and his death, that just because you have video of a public lynching doesn't necessarily mean you're going to receive justice. But you gave us a perfect segue, and I want to toss it over to Ish. You talked about it being political, these decisions being political. Well, one of the largest political figures, Joe Biden, who's seemingly, we'll see, is the Democratic nominee. He had a response to this whole thing. Ish, you have that those details?
Right. So on Twitter, he's demanding that Ahmaud Arbery receive justice. And one of the things that he stated is that the video is clear he was killed in cold blood, and that his heart goes out to Ahmaud's family. So we are obviously, for me, whichever way this goes, whether it's a political stunt to garner the Black vote, or if it's sincere from his heart from being a human, I would like to see this play out, to see if this statement that Joe Biden is giving will actually help Ahmaud's family receive justice. But that is the question. Do we believe that this is self-serving on Joe Biden's part to garner our vote for November, or do we think he's sincere in what he's saying?
What do you think, Natalie? Because you dealt with a highly politicized case like within the Trayvon Martin. What do you think? Do you think that when politicians, when they step up like a Joe Biden, do you think this is this pandering, or is this legitimate?
I kind of don't think it matters whether or not it is. I think that is the right thing to say, and it's the right thing to do. And at some point, you have to do the right thing. That's what I'm saying about this prosecutor. The prosecutor wasn't brave enough to do the right thing and just arrest. So whether or not Joe Biden is pandering, which I don't know Joe Biden, I know that his constituent, he has a very broad Black base. So it would behoove him to pander.
Yeah.
And ain't nothing wrong with that. We want people to pander to us.
You think so?
Yeah. Make sure you're doing what we need you to do and saying what we need you to say. So I think that that's one of the things that we have to get over, is calling people panderers or saying that they're selling out or doing that type of stuff, because if it is benefiting us and behooving us, that's what power is.
Yeah.
So power is making sure that what happens, what people do benefits our community.
With me, I think it's more of a it's nice to say, because we get a lot of that, especially when they call the white allies. Whenever there's an unarmed black man or black woman that is dead in the street, we get a lot of the coalitions of, oh, that's so terrible. They should arrest. They should indict. They should. However, a lot of the social media, I guess you would say, pandering doesn't necessarily turn into any actual legitimate policy. And I think that for me, reaction from someone who wants to be, our commander in chief, and who should really be thanking Black people for the position that he's in, despite his 94 crime bill, because of the, South Carolina, and therefore, because his campaign was dead in the water. I really believe that he should have came out, and that's a good time. If you're going to politicize something, that's a good time to say, hey, when I'm president, this is how we're going to punish these race soldiers for executing or publicly lynching Black folks.
Yes, I agree. I 100% agree. I think that we should get a concession. And that's one of the things, when you do have those allies who are saying this is horrible, that's the time to ask them, well, who are you going to vote for prosecutor? Who you vote for state prosecutor if you don't agree with this? So
on the flip side, what responsibility do we have as a Black community that, hey, we can't just say, okay, what are you going to do? Is it up to us? Do we have to be the one that have, power concedes nothing without a demand? So Is it up to us to actually have an agenda moving forward for them to, it would behoove us, but a lot of times we don't. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's not, I think that there are a lot of people with an agenda and with a plan, but they don't get voted for. So they don't get elected. They don't get put into leadership roles. I have met many people who have plans. One of the most disconcerting things to me during the Trayvon Martin case was when we would do media, and I would see people in the media who are celebrities or, commentators. When you actually have scholars and organizations who've been studying these issues for 20 years, why not go to them and ask them? They do have a plan. There are many people with a plan and with a Black agenda and with an agenda to lift Black people up. They don't have a voice. They don't have a platform.
You're right. Well, speaking of someone that does have a platform, is King James, LeBron James, who's usually very vocal when it comes to social justice topics and speaking out. He actually chimed in with this in the latest events.
Right. Along similar lines, LeBron James also tweeted. His was it tweeted or on Instagram? Do you know?
I believe it was Instagram. I want to say Instagram.
Yeah, I think his was on Instagram. But he said that Black men, we're literally hunted every day, and a couple other things in his post. And then he also ended with, he sent his prayers and blessings for Ahmaud's family. And so similar to the question that I asked about Joe Biden, someone else attacked a Fox, I think he's a sports reporter. Anyway, someone else attacked LeBron James for saying, was saying that LeBron James is trying to use this to seem like he's better than Michael Jordan, like create a better image, show that he has a better character so that he can be labeled as the greatest of all time, which to me was completely ridiculous because LeBron has always been very sincere and vocal about injustices towards Black men. So in my mind, I'm like, he doesn't even demonstrate the type of behavior or character where he's used something to benefit him or his image, because a lot of the time he doesn't even say anything about these people who are debating between who's better, who's the GOAT between Michael Jordan and LeBron James. He stays out of it. He let the people talk, and he just moves about his business, So in this particular case, just based on the character that he's demonstrated publicly, I say that it definitely wasn't him trying to be self-serving and get attention on himself to benefit, the argument that he's better than Michael Jordan. That's ridiculous. And I think that's a distraction. And to Natalie's point and what I was saying about letting this play out, whether it's Joe Biden or LeBron James, they are saying things where it could potentially benefit us if the consequence, the result is something that actually moves us forward.
Yeah. Natalie, let me ask you this. How hard is it when you want a specific narrative when you have a client and you want a specific narrative to be showcased in the media or reported in the media, when people like a Jason Whitlock of Fox Sports, when they try to direct the media, the narrative, like a Colin Kaepernick when he wants to kneel, then everybody says it's it's disrespecting the flag, which we all know is a smokescreen or a red herring. But they'll say, how important is it for to really stay focused and on message in the media, and how frustrating, and what are ways that you combat some of the redirecting with the media?
It's really easy to get a story in the media. It's really easy to get people to talk about it. All you have to do is be salacious and have a talking point, and people will talk about it. So for people who are watching the media, what is important is to really listen and check your sources. Make sure that you have someone that you can trust, whether it's a news channel or a source that you trust. For most people, the Associated Press is usually a pretty good source, meaning that they investigate a little more than news people. So if you look at people who are on the news as opposed to newspapers have time to write a story. People on the news, they get it, they have to tell the story right then. So they have no chance to really vet it and to really figure out what's going on. So we just have to really be discerning about that. And, distraction is the name of the game for people. That's what Jason gets paid for, to distract people.
Yeah.
and to discourage people like LeBron James. His whole attack was to discourage LeBron from speaking out. So LeBron was courageous for speaking out in the industry that he's in, because people like him get punished for speaking out by the Jason Whitlocks. And then they get people saying, oh, LeBron is not. And so it just becomes this crab in a bucket thing. So I think that we really should be supporting LeBron James when he does speak out, because he is risking a lot personally by speaking out.
Yeah. And I wanted to make sure that we, introduce, we have Jesse all the way from Boston. She just joined us, Natalie. Jesse, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Hi, Jesse.
Hi.
We're doing well. Jesse, real quick, I know you've been adamant on the show. You said, listen, politics is not my it's not my bag. I don't really get into that. Not necessarily because you're not knowledgeable, but it's just like, listen, it's just it could be real murky, right? And so, but you are a mother, right? And this is and Happy Mother's Day. I wish everybody else a Happy Mother's Day. So before Mother's Day, Happy Mother's Day to you. You have two young sons, and you see what's going on in the world. How does this affect you as a mother when you see these type of things going on, or in the world?
It affects me a great deal because it hits close to home, because I am raising two Black sons. But I feel like as a mother, the best thing that I can do is just educate my kids and lead them on the right path so they know what's out there for them. And, it's not going to be easy when they get out there. And I tell them that all the time. And just, educating them about what's actually going on and not hiding it from them. I think it's very important. That way they know, like, these things are real, this is happening, and you just have to be aware and mindful. Because I can try my best to protect them, but when I'm not with them, what can I do? It's the knowledge that I give to them is what they're going to leave with. So for me, whenever I see these things happening, it affects me a lot. But as a mom, I think the biggest thing that I can do is just continue to educate my kids, and just hopefully they'll take, the advice that I'm giving them, and they follow.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to switch gears briefly, Natalie, with the conversation of, our current day of what's going on in New York and really across the country is, everyone's dealing with this, we're quarantining, but we're dealing with this COVID-19. And as the country starts to reopen prematurely, I believe, in my humble opinion, I'm seeing a lot of racial targeting of African Americans, and they're using these policies of wearing a mask and the COVID-19 or the coronavirus pandemic as a way to target Black folks and racially terrorize them with, law enforcement or police, like Ishna spoke about her experience of people just calling the police. And we're always, white supremacists to white people are always using police to weaponizing law enforcement because they know, the more likelihood they're going to be on, their side. They're going to be on the side of white folks. What do we do? What can we do as an attorney as far as knowing our rights when a law enforcement officer approaches us for whether it's not wearing a mask or they feel like we're conjugating? Because we see white folks conjugating together too, and they're never targeted by these things. You saw a whole bunch of white folks, they were on the beach and they singled out one Black girl and tried to arrest her. So what do we do? How do we, what advice would you give to folks who are out there during the pandemic as far as how to combat these racialized attacks?
Let me tell you, when you have anything that is scary like a pandemic, and then you bring in the loss of jobs, and then you bring in the loss of people worried about their future and the money, tribalism happens. And that's what we're going to see more and more tribalism, where people are now, they're going to gravitate to their tribes, what they perceive as their tribes or whatever. Yeah. And you're going to have this. So in this time, that it's really important for us to make sure, and honestly, we done messed up. America. Okay. We done messed up because the Supreme Court has rolled back the 4th Amendment. They rolled back the 15th Amendment. We have these judges that Trump has appointed all over the benches, and he's appointed young judges on federal benches. Federal benches are lifetime positions. So he's appointing the youngest group of judges ever. So they're gonna, right now, when we've seen an erosion of civil rights, and civil rights were there to protect us and to protect us from these type of things. So many lawyers and many civil rights lawyers like myself, we're worried because you ask us what to do, and what we have seen is the stacking of the federal bench. And unless Joe Biden wins, which this is why I don't care, because we have a Supreme Court judge who is going to be stepping down. That's Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She's going to have, she can't hold on anymore. So we need him to appoint the Supreme Court judge. We don't want a Trump appointee. He's already appointed 2. We don't want another one. We need him. We need this. We also have federal judgeships that are coming open. We need Joe Biden we need Joe Biden to be president. I don't care what you think about him. I don't care about what, just for that. So when you ask about what can we do and what, there's nothing you can do unless you upset the power structure. And right now we have had 4 years of a power structure that has been running amok. And so many, we're distracted by all the little things and all the distractions of Trump being stupid and everything. But what we're not seeing is, and what I'm seeing every day as I do civil rights cases, is that our rights are being eroded. And it's scary. It's really scary. And so when you think about it and you think about the ramifications of it, we need to get out and vote. And I'm not one that tries to scare people into voting. I feel like you could do what you want to do, but we're risking a Supreme Court judge, and I believe it's like 96 federal judges. And these judges set precedent. What precedent means is that the Supreme Court is the law of the land. So even if a judge, you got a good judge where you live and stuff and you like your judge, it don't matter if the Supreme Court says that this is the law. He has to follow that law. That's what precedent is. So it's really important for us, and it's really important, most of the time I would say do what you want to do, but this is critical. It's critical.
Javonni, you had something?
Sorry, I was on mute, but I guess in general, we have been hearing about marches and surprisingly, I don't know, well, I wouldn't even say surprisingly, but I did read an article from the Washington Post, and the title was, it says, why is Georgia only now seeking justice for Ahmaud Arbery?
Yeah.
Ahmaud Arbery. We know the terrible answers. And so I'm thinking a lot of people are asking right now, if marching isn't the solution, what is?
What are, Natalie, what are some other ways, because we have a lot of social justice warriors on social media, and that's cool.
Okay.
But what are some other ways? And I know you mentioned a few, but do you have some other? I know you said about supporting candidates, and but for some of our young folks and our activists or people that want to make a difference, what are some ways that
they need to run for office? They need to become police officers. They need to become state attorneys. They need to become district attorneys. One of the reasons I used to work at the public defender's office when I first got out of law school. I quit because I realized being a criminal defense lawyer, you have no power. The only power is the prosecutor. We need to take these jobs. We need to go into these professions. We need to take over. That is the only way. We have to figure out how to achieve power. We need to not be afraid of power. We need to take it just like they take it. And so, yeah, when you're going, Biden is important, but guess what? Guess who else is important here in Orlando? The state attorney. The state attorney is somebody who can, we know right now we have a state attorney's race where there are 3 people in it. There is 4 people in it. There is one, Monique Houghton-Worwell, who is running. She is the only difference maker for Black people. She's the only choice for Black people if you want to make a difference. And that's what we need to be looking at. We need to be looking at these power positions and putting our people in these positions if we want to change things.
Well, last time that we had a state attorney's race, I was heavily instrumental in that. I think this go round, I haven't really, I know who's running, and I know that Monique is someone new. I'm not as familiar, with her, so, we'll definitely keep an eye on that, on that race. What is it? We'll talk about it. What the sales pitch? What is it about her that you feel? Because this is an endorsement. What is it about her that you feel like she's the next best option for state attorney at Osceola and Orange County here in Orlando, Florida?
Just listeners, she believes that there's too many people incarcerated, that we don't need all these incarcerations. She believes that the youth should not have criminal records. They should be given civil citations to come to court. She believes in the expungement of drug records for everyone, since now marijuana is legal. She believes in the, of course, she doesn't believe in the death penalty. All those progressive things that we need. She believes in doing that. She's going to continue a lot of the progressive things that Aramis has done, such as the Sentencing Integrity Commission, which looks at the prior sentencing of people and say, was this the right thing to do? If not, guess what? I'm state attorney. I can expunge their record, and I ain't got to ask nobody. Every state attorney has had that power. Nobody's done it. Now we have people who are willing to do it.
No, that's
Attorney Jack, another thing. Okay, so we do speak about power, and I have been hearing conversations like tweets where people are saying what we need to do outside of power is we need to buy back our communities, or it needs to be a greater need where more Black people have ownership over the entire community so we can jog in neighborhoods and not have to worry about being shot. Do you know if it is difficult, or have you had conversations with people where it's like we're in a standstill to the point where we cannot have control over communities because of just how things are?
I think that we're in a position where many people are in poverty or one paycheck from poverty. So it's really hard to buy back communities for people. If we could, I think that's great. I have friends who have left the country and they're living in Belize on a monkey farm. Okay, so they don't want to deal with this. So if you can do it, more power to you. But the average person just can't do it. They can't do it. So why should we have put more of a burden on ourselves to do stuff when we paying the same taxes as everybody else? We have the same. Why not just make the system do what it's supposed to do? And why not make it work for us? Why should you have to, when I hear people say, we should not call police officers, which is what I would not do, right? But why should I have to not call police officers when my taxpayer paying for a police officer? this police officer should do what the hell they supposed to be doing and do it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So that is my thing. I think that if we can, I believe in self-empowerment. I believe in making sure that we are okay. So if you are in a position to do that, more power to you. But remember all our brothers and sisters who are not in that position, and they're not in that position because of systemic racism.
Mm. Yeah. No. You're absolutely right. And we have a responsibility, especially on this platform, to continue to educate and empower everyone, on these issues, definitely on the state and local level that sometimes gets, forgotten as well. So, Natalie, and I know, and just to let everybody know, we're on with attorney Natalie Jackson. She's been with us as we are getting ready to wrap. I definitely want to get your thoughts on a few stories, and just say you have one that you wanted to get Natalie's opinion on.
Yes, I do.
Current events, yeah.
Yes, so it's in regards to Earl Thomas. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with who he is. He's the safety for the Baltimore Ravens. Mm-hmm. So recently he was caught up with his wife, who held a gun to his head after he got caught cheating. When the cops arrived, they found the wife running after him. She had a knife in his hand, and he managed to get the gun from her, and he was running with the gun. The cops drew the gun. The cops ordered both of them to stop. They drew their guns to both of them. And she claims that she had took the bullets out of the chamber, but there was still one left. But what do you think about that? I mean, I get it, like with the cheating, that can be a little, I mean, me, I don't play that, I don't really like that stuff. But, do you think like she took it overboard by bringing a gun to where he was at because he was cheating?
I think that there's no amount of love that should make anybody risk their life or their liberty for, unless you're protecting someone.
Yes. Natalie, I wanted to ask you, because on my Facebook right now, as we're speaking, there's a conversation, a thread of men and women going back and forth, because I said, listen, if this had happened to be the other way around, and Earl Thomas had chased his wife with a knife and chased her with a gun pulled to her head, he would have lost his career. A black male athlete would have been the face of violence once again. This conversation about Earl Thomas probably would have superseded the one of Ahmaud in the national news, to kind of get away from that. And so, I is there a stigma? And this is what I believe, and you tell me if I'm wrong. Is there a stigma with black men in victimhood? Can black men be victims in this country? Because it seems like we can.
That has been a constant theme in America, is the stigma against black men, and the adultification of children, especially black children, and the fact that it's very hard to see them as victims and as children. We saw that in Trayvon Martin. It was very hard. Many white people just couldn't see him as a child, and it irked them when you called him a child.
Yeah.
So, I think in a case, but in the whole, and this is not a legal thing, it's just me as a woman and being an older woman. I'm 50 years old.
Give us some knowledge.
Let me give you some knowledge.
Yes.
If you want people to respect you, Earl Thomas's wife, who feels disrespected because her husband's cheating on her, if you want people to respect you, do the respectable thing and leave them when they hurt you. Don't run around. Don't run around after them. Leave.
But I love him, Natalie. We were supposed to be together. I love him, though. What happened?
Love yourself more. Love yourself more.
No, that's good. That's good, solid advice. So as we are about to wrap up,
because you realize this lady is now risking prison time. And if she doesn't get prison time, they're going to spend a whole lot of money on attorneys. This was just a mess that was not worth it. Her reputation is ruined. Who's going to hire her if she ever need a job, or this is always going to be on the media. This is just not worth it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it for him, and it's not worth it for her.
Yeah, and it was embarrassing because his brother was, the story details he was with his brother, and they were with, a plethora of women at the time, engaging in sexual activity, and she hacked into his Snapchat in order to find his location. So for all the fellas out there with the social media accounts and stuff, they know. Women always know guys' passwords. I don't know. That's like y'all don't say nothing, but y'all know the passwords to phones and the codes to social medias. Y'all know for rainy days, right,
It's
Natalie?
all in the
Well, I wanted to. What was that? Was that Ish?
Don't put us all together because
I
don't know I don't know their passwords.
Neither do I, Ish, and I don't want it.
You don't want it? Okay.
Right.
You're all separate.
Right.
You're gonna do what you want to do.
Exactly. And to your point, you're not worth me risking my life or throwing away my own life. So whenever I do find out whatever, I'm still gonna just be like, all right, you're not healthy for me. Deuces.
Exactly.
Who was it? I think it was the Braxtons. One of the Braxtons said on one of their TV shows, they said, if you're not gonna leave, let that man cheat in peace. Because you're just going to cause yourself.
My grandmother had said that if you're not ready to walk away, because if you're not ready to walk away, there's no point in letting him know that you've seen the disrespect. Like if you acknowledge it every time, you're just teaching him that he's going to get away with it, and you don't respect yourself enough or love yourself enough to leave when you're acknowledging it. So some women have said, if you're not going to leave, and I guess if you don't have a person who you believe is going to change their behavior, work on it, then some women say you stay there.
Well, I wanted to, as we start to wrap, one story I wanted to just mention, our heart goes out to the security guard in Flint, Michigan, who was killed and murdered by a man. Oh, there was a dispute over wearing a mask at a Family Dollar, and this man was shot. I think he's a father of 9, is what I read. Just shot in cold blood over something stupid, a stupid argument. So I know that they charged the woman, the wife, with, I think they charged her with first-degree murder. And then they just recently, I read today, that they charged the daughter who wasn't in the altercation, but they charged her with, I think, tampering and accessory to murder, because I guess she's not telling them where the father and her brother is, who pulled the trigger. So our hearts goes out to them. And you guys, if these orders are in place, please don't do anything stupid to put yourself in a position to, to be harmed. And there's people out here who are really unstable, who, like Natalie, you said, they're going through hard times. People are really triggered. And someone who is who was a security guard, this story really resonated with me, because, that's something, everything that man said or he did is something I would have did, and as far as telling them, hey, if you're not wearing a mask, this is the policy, you got it, she can't come in. And then I would have told, and if she got lippy with me and started causing the scene, I would have told the store not to allow her any sale, and she's got to leave the store immediately. So, these two guys that decided to go there to confront the security guard, and we're always taught to not have our backs turned to people. And so at that split second, this man's life and the life of his kids and everything was taken away. And so that's the harsh reality of our experience. And, if we're going to talk about these white supremacists, we also got to talk about, the crime that we're doing. Not saying the whole black on black crime, but we have to shed a light on ignorance that causes someone to lose their life. Did you have any thoughts on that, Natalie?
I just agree with you. I thought that was just a sad story. And, people are triggered. So please be careful when you're out there. People have been isolating with people who are abusing them, who they can't stand, and they are triggered. I saw a lady cuss a clerk out today, and I was just like, is it that serious?
Yo, I'm telling you.
It is.
Yeah. Ish, you had something to add?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to say one of the I don't like when the Black on Black anything is brought into conversations when we're talking about police brutality. I just hate
Neither do
correlation. And so
Mhm.
one of the things I do want to point out is that even in this instance with the security guard, you see there was an arrest made. They have no problem with us killing each other and throwing the others away. You know, they will find justice for that, because guess what? It's just a whole bunch of Black lives that we've all thrown away, essentially, which it is. We have a responsibility in this situation to control our emotions and our anger and make sure we're not, you know, murdering each other and taking our lives. Because what happens is you die, and then the people who are arrested end up having themselves thrown in jail. So we all lose in the end, essentially. And what's crazy is that I'm actually, of course, officers can't say straight out that you can murder someone, but I've been told, like, if it gets to XYZ where you need to, you know, use a gun, and it would have been in, like, for self-defense protection, but I was told you will have to do what you have to do, like, in so many words. And I was like, I understand that. If worst case comes to worst, I will actually have to protect my child. But I was like, it was so easily said when we were dealing with another Black life, that was so easily said, like, hey, well, if you need to do it, you know, go ahead and murder. But I just feel in other instances, like, that would not have been said. If I was dealing with, like, let's say a white woman or a white man, it wouldn't have been like a secret or around the way of saying you can take this person life under this law, or under, you know, if you follow that, you'll have a better chance of winning your case in court. I just feel like if it wasn't us dealing with, or it wasn't me dealing with another Black person, that would have never even been brought up in the conversation. So although, like I said, if worst case scenario had occurred as me having to protect my child, I am very much so in the mindset of protecting my child by any means necessary. However, I was also thinking, if I don't have to get to that, like, I don't need to be another sister taking a brother's life, you know, or taking another sister's life, because no one cares, it seems. If you don't make the decision to try to do the right thing and to actually care and find a healthier way to deal with disputes and disagreements, then we're all just going to be taking each other out, whoever it is.
Yeah. No, I agree. So I just want to make sure that let's give Natalie a round of applause. Thank you so much for joining us on the Soapbox, Natalie, to kick it off. Right before we get off, we have a segment, Natalie, we like to call moral of the story. So we toss it to everybody. It's just a way to wrap a bow around the conversation that we had. So I'm going to toss it to everyone. If you also want to give a Mother's Day shout out to your mothers, you're more than welcome to. But I'm gonna toss it to, Javonni.
My moral of the story is to be aware of just the people that we're dealing with when we're around them, and to just always try to make sure that your number one priority is to make it home.
Absolutely. Jesse, your moral of the story.
My moral of the story is educate your kids, let them be aware of the dangers that are out there. And also, if you have a man who's cheating, leave. Do not go up to him and bring a gun, because that's only going to affect you, and you don't want that. So just leave that man, girl. Just leave him.
Absolutely. Ish, what's your moral of the story?
My moral of the story is, if you really want to make change, get in positions of power so you can, or elect people who can help you, who are in positions of power. And also know your rights, keep asking questions, do not be fearful, because we're not going to win if we keep operating out of fear. If people keep telling us to stay out of this neighborhood, we need the same rights as everyone else if we're operating and doing the same exact thing that they're doing, and we're all being responsible citizens. So do not operate out of fear, and make sure you're getting power in your hands as well.
Absolutely. Natalie, Attorney Jackson, what is your moral of the story?
My moral of the story is that if you feel like you can make a difference in the lives of Black people, do it. Run for office. Don't let your background hold you down. Don't let your poverty level or how much money you have hold you back. Grab that power position.
Amen.
Yes, thank you for that. And my moral of the story is, first I want to say again, happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers that are here today joining us on the Soapboxx Podcast. Make sure you enjoy your Sunday, get you some R&R. Sorry I'm not around, the quarantine to babysit, but I also want to say Happy Mother's Day to my mother, because I know as an activist, a lot of times, she has these concerns, and she lives with this. And Black women especially live with this fear, this intrinsic fear every day of every time that you walk out that door, or she calls me, that you may not pick up because, he's out there fighting for social justice. He's getting involved with things, and trying to advocate for other people. And so in order to have that, to take that on, that burden on, mothers are strength. My mom has incredible strength, and I've gotten, she's allowed me to have that too as well. So my hat's off to y'all, and it's a very thankless job. And so I want to say Happy Mother's Day to my mother. Happy Mother's Day to you all. And for everybody who wants to get knowledge and continue this fight, we say this is then, now, and forever, because this fight will never die. We are always going to continue to have to fight for our rights because they were never given to us. So let's not get complacent. Let's continue to equip ourselves with education and make sure that we know our rights. So for Jesse, for Javonni, for Ishna, for attorney Natalie Jackson, thank you all for joining us on the Soapboxx Podcast this episode. We'll be out. We'll see you next week for more of this series on the movement, then, now, and forever. Thank you so much.
Let me say Happy Mother's Day, Miss Francis.
Yes. Yes. Happy Mother's Day. Yes. A legend. I don't know if you guys seen the Trayvon Martin documentary on BET. Natalie, you were a part of that as well, right?
Yes.
Yep. So she's a legend out in Sanford. We got to pay homage to these civil rights icons that have come before us, that have actually paved the way for us to do what we're doing. So yes, absolutely. Amen. Happy Mother's Day. And to all those who are listening, whether it's from Britain, from UK, Portugal, anywhere within the United States, California, all of our Soapboxx Podcast listeners, whether you listen to us on YouTube, or you watch us on our Facebook Live show, or whether or not you are listening to us on iTunes or Spotify or wherever our streaming services are, iHeartRadio. Thank you all for supporting us. Mothers, have a beautiful, relaxing Mother's Day. Peace. Thank you. We love you.
Peace.
Bye. Peace.